We're snorting cap rates and shooting up cash flow here at Deal Junkie.
Welcome back to Deal Junkies.
That was solemn.
This is Dane McKinney.
He's back.
I'm back in
There we go. There we go. Some excitement.
We're here with Trevor Howard.
Where have you been, dude? We haven't seen you in months.
Michael P. Nuss. I have been traveling, surprisingly enough, actually. Yeah, I was out of town. So, and you guys
For 2
also-
months? I haven't heard from you even. I've texted you multiple times, no response, and then you just show up all of a sudden.
That's not true. This is all made up.
He's creating a legacy.
Trevor and I talk more. I talk to Trevor more than anybody else on the planet.
Don't worry, their partnership is not exploding.
Trevor takes so many of my daily words go towards Trevor.
You're welcome.
If I have 1,000 words a day, 800 have to be allocated towards Trevor's ideas.
Seems like a good 80-20 rule.
It works. It's a Pareto principle.
Yeah.
No, it works.
So Gabe's not here today.
Gabe's in Maui.
Is that where he's at?
Yeah. They always go to Maui. They've tried the other islands, and they're Maui addicts. They, I think that's where they've gone like every time other than one or two.
Hey, Gabe, thanks for giving me an invite through Trevor the other night. I appreciate that.
Oh, do you want... Gabe invited us to go if you want to go on Tuesday.
No, I can't because I can't. I'm going to Arizona this weekend.
Oh, next time.
You were going to Arizona last time we were in Hawaii, too.
No.
In the spring? I'm pretty
Maybe.
sure.
Yeah.
You had like a golf trip down there or
I
something.
think
Yeah.
Sounds
can't.
about right.
Because we invited you and you.
I don't
Or you
think I
just,
went.
All right.
or you just
I don't think I
make up
went.
these
I don't
trips
think
to
I went.
Arizona
No,
so
no,
you
no.
don't have
Literally.
to go hang out
No,
with
I have
us.
3 amazing rounds of golf booked
Oh, good.
for
Okay.
next
All
weekend.
right.
Okay, can we get to some
Yeah.
stuff?
So,
Okay.
Mike, you
Yeah.
wanted to talk about the presidential election, recap it, and how it affects us in the real estate space, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think because I'm at 20 years older than you and I'm a dad, I probably have more thoughts on the election that you guys probably want to avoid because you think that you need to be kosher and avoid sensitive topics.
I don't think I need. I actually knew nothing about most stuff until like a month ago. And
You
then
knew
I
nothing
felt
about
that-
most stuff?
Yeah, related.
You
to
weren't
politics.
educated on the current political
Nah,
cycle.
No.
I think I'm not really educated on politics in general. I think my education through politics is just a byproduct of economics and then getting forced into it through a landlord-tenant scenario.
This will be a great podcast then. We all know nothing about
No, but I love
No,
that.
I learned a lot.
I love
I
that
just read
statement
about
because
it.
I think the reflection of the economy is just literally America's opinion on America right now. And I'll be typically what I do is I vote independent. And my whole thought process of that is because the value of a third party isn't from having a third choice. The value of having a third party comes from making all 3 parties dynamic in the way that they think, act, and institute their policies and the way they communicate to their constituents. With 2 parties, you have one front, and you can just throw blunt objects after blunt objects of yells, and it ultimately boils down to fear-based tactics. If you have a third party, now you have multi-fronts. You have to be multifaceted in how you communicate. You can't pander to one constituent. That's better for the ultimately what's better for the country.
Give an example of that. So what's where is that valuable on a specific topic?
Oh, I think that one of the best points is as an independent, you think of the statement, my body, my choice. Okay.
Mhm.
So you can use it as, we'll just throw the Republicans out there. So Democrats use that for abortion, and then we get into COVID, and then they just use the exact same argument to throw it at them. So it's the same belief on the opposite side of the coin for a different vacuum, a different context. They have the same beliefs, right? As humans, we all have some of the very similar core beliefs. We're tribal, we're fearful, we have a heart, we have a brain, we're loving, we're fearful. When you have 2 parties, you can just throw all your fear at that one party and you can ignore all your contradictions inside. And so as an independent, and as I've learned through this with your Gabe, there's more people registered as independent. Now you're stuck choosing the worst option because they don't have to be any better.
You're stuck choosing the worst option or the
Yes.
least bad option?
The least bad option.
Yeah.
And then that is a race to the lower value, right? You don't have to be valuable. You just have to be less bad than the other competition.
Yeah.
And so we don't actually have anyone that brings value. And so when I look at the election, I see that, okay, Trump not only won, but he won the popular vote and the electoral vote. To me, I look at that and says, okay, America has spoken, and we've seen this with how social media has gone and how things, we want authenticity, right? Authentic and authenticity is a word that's come more into the light over the past 10 years, even more the past 5 years. And we see that and we feel that. And so now take it to me as an independent. I didn't show up to vote. I had no desire to vote. The other part of that is I have kids that are in the LGBTQ community. I just slaughtered that. As a dad, and here's a comment that I've heard a lot is, I heard someone at the golf club say this. Similar scenario, dad, kid's gay. I've decided that my vote I can't vote for me. I need to vote for my kids. I've heard a lot of people say that. If there's anyone that's going to be that and that's going to then go vote for a Democrat or Kamala because that makes sense if that's your child and that you're kind of, I had no desire to go vote for someone on that side of the equation because I didn't see any value proposition other than that person's bad, other than you should be afraid of that other side, other than Project 25, other than all these scary, scary things. I didn't hear one thing that I could support.
Yeah.
And I don't do things out of fear. I do things out of confidence. I do things out of love. I do things out of this is valuable. So when it comes time to a vote, typically what I would do is I would fill out my ballot. I'd vote for the independent on the presidential election, and I'd look at what happens at the local level. Me as an individual, it was so messy and chaotic and emotional at the macro levels. I didn't even pay attention to the local politics. And I was so disenfranchised at the presidential level that I didn't even care what happened at the local level. And that is what's problematic for America. And that's the problem of a two-party system.
I'm a big believer that your local government is substantially more important than the national government, the federal government. But that's a take for another day.
Well, no, and as we were prepping, what I was thinking about this, and it is good to go down this road. There's a house that's being renovated. Two scenarios in life right now. There's a house being renovated on the corner across from Bush Park. Beautiful old craftsman, big historic structure, corner lot, big lot, oversized lot. I probably parked in front of that house, drove in front of that house, rode my bike in front of that house thousands of times as a kid. Spent a lot of time at that park. About 6 months ago, I got two phone calls from my daughter during the school day. I don't get phone calls from my daughter during the school day. She texts. Not only did she call, and I was in a meeting, I couldn't answer. I sent a voicemail. She called right back. So I answered it. Dad, they're shooting. Very chaotic fucking phone call. My daughter was witnessing a shooting at the park that I felt most safe with in my life. In front of this house I walk by all the time, and it's relating economics and real estate and everything that I've done and my past of where that environment was and how much that environment shaped me, baseball practices, flag football, all that type of stuff. One thing I used to say growing up was Salem is a very, very good, safe place to raise your kids. My kids don't have that. My kids don't have that level of protection, that level of insulation. That has nothing to do with the president at all. None of the presidents between when I was their age and when they're this age put influence in the life for my kids to witness a shooting where I didn't, right? That's just kind of the changes of life. But I think when we get into an election, the tactic is you need to be afraid for your kids. You need to be afraid for what they're doing at the national level and how that's going to affect you in your world. And the reality is that's not true. The reality is our local politics are going to happen. Here's the other thing I wanted to point to is, anyone heard about downtown Portland?
I've heard of it.
Days?
Yeah, last couple of days. Do you know why?
Nothing's happened?
Not one protest. Not one broken window. Not one riot.
What's the take there?
The unrest that we felt was here. The unrest that the Democrats wanted to bash over your head. The fear that they wanted to invoke into our nation. And I'm not saying Republicans didn't do that. It sounds really bad for Democrats. It wasn't there. And the downtown Portland is one of the areas you can then point to of if there were a place that we're going to say this is terrible, the fact that we elected this man as the president is the worst thing ever, it would have showed up in downtown Portland, and it didn't. And the fact that it didn't show up in downtown Portland kind of shows you how the constituents that the Democrats have been trying to pander to are worn out as well. They don't have anything left in them either because there's nothing to actually rally them around. And when you look at what happened with this election and contrast it to the last, the card they tried to use this was the fear card, the hate card. It worked 4 years ago. You can only play that card once. And then you dovetail on the episode that Gabe and I did. I think this is really good. I think it gives us an opportunity to move past some of this unrest. I think the fear of a fully red Senate, Congress, and president, not great. But here's the one thing I wanted to get into is this concept of thick-faced black heart. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place here. We talked about this in the book episode at the very end, and I didn't really get into it. The concept of thick-faced black heart, written by a Chinese author, business theory, based on ancient Chinese military theory. The thick face is, that's the thick skin. The black heart is the ruthlessness. In what I really like about this book is at the most carnal level, at the ruthless level, he puts it into levels either 1 through 3 or 1 through 5. At level 1, it is evil. It's pure evil. And the analogy he uses is the con man, the thief. They're very charming. They have a thick face. They don't care what people think about them, but they have a very black heart. And they use that with an evil intention. There's no moral lens, and they use that for bad. Well, thick-faced black heart is actually how you ascend to be an amazing leader. We want our leaders to make hard decisions. We want our leaders to have thick skin. We want our leaders to be charming. The problem with Donald Trump is we don't know where he fits on that scale. The assumption is he fits on scale number 1. And based on what he's shown us, that's not that hard of an assumption to make because he's very individualistic in how he thinks. He very wants things to go his way, the way he believes it should be done, and really doesn't care about other people. He doesn't care about the downfall problems that exist when he communicates how he exists or acts how he exists. He wants to run the country as a ruthless business that doesn't matter if we go bankrupt or not. Does that kind of make sense? Like that's the persona that we point or project onto Donald Trump. Where my brain's going, and probably because I'm a more hopeful human being, is it's really hard to argue other than the fact that he doesn't know what he's doing with tariffs. You actually have an alignment of all the powers to be where you can actually get something done. There's value in having to negotiate across the lines, but we haven't seen negotiating across the lines in so long. We've seen one presidency undo what the previous one did, and we just have a bunch of undone. We're not going forward anywhere. I do think, or what I'm hopeful for, I don't even know where I'm going with this, but maybe we can actually get some economic change because we have an alignment and we can make some decisions that we haven't been able to make, and we can cut some spending that we really do need to cut.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe we can, through unity on the fiscal side, which I do believe Trump is a better fiscal candidate. Specifically, his team is significantly better from the fiscal side of what value they can bring to the table. Maybe they can get something done there. What you don't know about Trump, though, is like on the Project 25 stuff. He said he doesn't support it. He said those are fringe supporters of his regime. What you don't know is, well, does he care if we go bankrupt? Is he really set on doing 60% tariffs? Or is he going to be tactical with how he implements tariffs and how he implements spending? So we have this whole fear-based scenario that we're in, but we did get through the election. We don't have significant riots happening. It was a decisive victory, so we don't have a struggle for power. Mm-hmm. So whether your candidate won or whether your candidate didn't win, We're at a point now where we kind of need to go through this process, and what will that process kind of look like? And I think that's what you guys wanted to talk about as I went on this big rant of what does that mean now going forward, that now we have a Trump presidency, not only a Trump presidency, but a Republican Senate and House.
Mm-hmm. What do tariffs do? What's a tariff, Mike?
Well, and here's the thing is everyone that's been arguing about them, trying to make people who don't know tariffs sound really dumb, is they base it on import tariffs. Well, there's also export tariffs, right? So there's import tariffs and export tariffs. So the conversation we've typically heard is the import tariffs. We're going to put tariffs on imports, which our businesses are then going to pay. And then the assumption is okay, well, they have excess cost. They're going to pass that cost on to the consumer. The consumer will then pay for it, and then prices go up, and then that is inflationary. What he wants to do is the big heavy rhetoric on this has been, well, I want to eliminate taxes, and I want to replace that with tariffs. And so that is the double-edged sword of inflation now in the scenario of I want to reduce taxes. So I want to pull less money out of the economy because we're going to tax less. But I want to reduce those taxes at the business level. And so that means we're going to be giving more tax breaks to businesses. And then the hope is that just then offsets tariffs.
I thought they wanted to do more tariffs to persuade people to produce more in America rather than.
Yep. And so here, let's do the math on that. Okay. So right now we get goods from China because they can produce it for cheaper. So the reason we don't produce in America is because we can produce it cheaper anywhere else. We can't reduce the costs in America. So the only way to produce in America is to make the expense more outside of America. So that way economics says, well, then now we will produce in America. So that is the definition of inflation. We need to increase prices so we can afford to produce in America. And so that's where the supporters of the tariffs are, oh, no, we're going to do tariffs and then we're going to bring jobs back to America. Maybe. And maybe in some industries that is true, but it's not going to be across the board. Tariffs are like scalpels. They need to be used in specific industries based on the dynamics of competition in those specific industries, and even more so on a micro level with specific countries, because those specific countries have specific advantages that hurt us. And the problem is a tax code is a blanket economic-wide code. It is a blanket tool. That's not what a tariff is. So you can't replace a blanket tool with a scalpel. And that's where it's, when you look at my fear with Trump, and this is where I don't give in to my hope, is you've seen how he acts. He doesn't care about going in bankruptcy. He's fine compartmentalizing his real estate projects. He's fine if they go south. He's fine if those contractors don't get paid. He is a ruthless businessman. He can play life and run life in a finite mindset with these little battles. And if I win some of the battles, great. If I lose some of the battles, it doesn't matter. A government cannot run that way. A government needs to run on an infinite mindset of staying alive. That is the government's role, is to stay alive. That is in contrast to how Trump has run his businesses in the past. That's my concern.
Hey guys, this is Trevor. Do you want to join the Vesta team? Because we're hiring right now. We're looking for a real estate broker in the Portland area who is investment focused. So if you have a real estate license and you own 2 or more rentals, or if you just own 2 or more rentals and want to join the team, there's a link in the description where you can learn more and apply. Check it out.
I wouldn't necessarily agree or disagree with that. But I do think that we have evidence from the previous presidency that, at least from a fiscal policy perspective, he did a pretty good job. I think generally he did a pretty good job, right? I think that most of the decisions that were made.
Yeah, well, you look at his tariffs that he did implement. They didn't get taken away, right? So it's and that's where it's hard to. Here's where I love America. The Joe Rogan. I don't know if you listened to the Joe Rogan Trump episode. I listened to most of it. And the reason I listened to it is because I saw my hardcore Trump supporting fans pushing it like it was amazing. Mm-hmm. And I saw my hardcore Kamala supporting fans pushing it like this is evidence that this guy's terrible. But if you look at it, it's the same evidence of what we said. The guy doesn't really make a coherent statement. He answers a question with an 8-minute dialogue,
That
which
was
is
wild.
which is an amazing. But that's sales.
What you love to do too.
Exactly. Fuck yes, that's sales.
Frick yeah.
That is sales. That is politicians. And here's what it is he's no different than a politician. We just know that we're okay putting the politician, we're okay with the politician being at the 1 or 2 level of the thick-faced black heart. We've never had a businessman in that role. We have once. But I think America struggles with what box we put around and are we okay with that wrapper we do put there.
So how does this affect real estate? Because Dane was trying to explain to me he thinks the market's going to crash based on something you gave a presentation on. And I would love to hear more about that.
So I was in a group text the other day and someone asked, hey, Mike, what does this mean? I said, well, Trump is 3 words. Trump is bad for real estate. And this doesn't make sense because Trump is inflationary. 5 words. Yeah.
Trump bad real.
Yeah, but okay, so and here's where real estate is
6
at.
words.
Real estate is no longer a free market. And here's the definition of market value has cash basis on it that no longer applies.
What?
Because there's so much debt. So because there's so much debt, interest rates matter more to real estate than it ever has. So we can create an inflationary marketplace. Why do we buy real estate?
Well, I
To
think
hedge
people,
against
Because it's inflationary, it goes up in value. What have we not seen in the heaviest inflationary market that we've seen? Real estate go up in value because it's maxed out from an affordability standpoint, because it's now a leveraged class. It is now an asset class that has debt as part of the component, and that leverage affects its ability to continue to go up in value on par with where inflation is going.
we're
I
note
think that's a hot
traders.
take. I think that's a hot take.
Explain it.
I think the
it's a hot
fundamental.
I think it's a hot take because the feeling of the outcome of the inflation is what we felt for the last 2 years when real estate has not gone up and has gone down in value. Commercial by 10 to 20%, residential by 2. I don't know. I'm not in
Residential hasn't
but-
even really gone down.
Nope, you guys are wrong. And the reason you're wrong is because you're not selling new construction. Any builder out there that is selling new construction, none of them will tell you the market has not gone down.
I just said commercial. I think commercial's gone down 20%.
I'm talking about residential. You just said
I don't-
residential,
yeah,
maybe
no.
2. No.
I care on the commercial front is where I care about because the commercial front is entirely tied to the interest rates. I agree with that. And the commercial values went up by the same or more than the amount of inflation during COVID, but then we had the 100%.
Nope, they went up because of the interest rates being low, which created the inflation.
That's what I'm saying.
Mhm.
But I'm saying we experienced the increase in value during COVID, and we haven't experienced the same decrease in value.
Yeah, and what's changed is real estate used to be riding the wave of inflation. And now real estate's on the front edge of that wave. And so the values ran up because we had really cheap rates to run that value up, which then created the inflation. And the problem is we have prices at such a high point right now that the only way to help the economy is to devalue the assets. The leveraged assets.
Sure.
That's why gold's not getting devalued. That's why Bitcoin's not getting devalued. And that.
Sure.
But from real estate, a leveraged asset, because debt is such a huge component,
Yeah.
and it wasn't the case until we got to this max leverage.
Yeah.
From a society, why are we trying to pull money out of our economy? We're at a max leverage. And the max leverage creates economic problems that says historic economic principles no longer work. And where I started thinking about this was with rent increases. And so when I got involved with rent control and rent policies, and we're going to institute this and that's going to get passed on and it's just going to increase rent and the tenants, no, it's not what happened. Because all these policies that said you're going to increase cost and that's going to go down to the tenant, all those policies came after year after year after year of huge rent appreciation. Tenants were tapped out. And so when you created more supply cost for the holders of real estate, they could no longer push those costs on to the tenants because they could just no longer afford for it. And what that is the equilibrium of affordability in the marketplace. And because we have debt in real estate and because we have so much amount of debt in real estate and because that amount of debt has pushed the values so high, we are so sensitive to interest rates now on a level that we never have been before, which is why until we can get some money out of the economy and until we can get the value of real estate more in line in the historic correlation to inflation, inflation will not help real estate.
Aren't we in line with it now because you didn't have value increases though for a bit, so you're not that far off?
No, if you look at the historic trend, yeah, we're probably not that far off.
It doesn't
but
seem like.
No, I think that it's trended exactly with inflation over the past 10 years. Yes. Over the past 10 years?
I wish we just pull it up.
Yeah,
no,
pull it.
COVID.
You guys keep talking. I'll pull it up.
COVID took us significantly off that line. We got above the line prior to the crash. The crash brought us back in line, and then we got again overextended on that line.
Which part of it? What are you saying? Where inflation has gone past the value?
Yeah, historically, if you look at house values and inflation, there's a really close correlation until the couple 2004, 5, 6, 7.
Percentage increase of home value and percentage increase of inflation.
Yes.
Okay.
There is a gap in that graph where now, homes are inflating in value higher than inflation. And then when we had the Great Recession, the deleveraging, home values came back down to get in line with inflation. But all we've done since then is print, and then add a not the same relative increase in value. So now we've seen more inflation in real estate than we have in real life up until 2022.
Okay.
And that was exacerbated in 2020. But from 2014 to 2016, that line, houses were appreciating faster than inflation. And that's the problem.
From 2014 to 2022.
To 2020, and then it got exacerbated after COVID.
Yeah.
And then some of that exacerbation has come out, but not all of it from the years prior has come out.
So you're arguing that real estate is still above inflation?
Yes.
Okay, I thought you were saying that real estate was no longer a hedge against inflation.
It is not a hedge against inflation until it comes back down to inflation trends. It has an excess value there that should not be there.
Oh, so you're saying if you're just now getting into it, that's a problem? But if you have held that asset since 2014, then you're still beating inflation.
Yeah, and I don't care about
Well, that's what I was saying though, is that I thought you were saying that inflation has outpaced the values of real estate.
No, the opposite.
Yeah,
and because real estate is
that was my
outplaced
argument.
inflation, you don't have inflation doesn't help real estate in this window of time.
Yeah.
Like we expect it to.
So if you were to buy a property today.
Yeah.
So, I agree with that.
So
I agree with that.
So it doesn't make sense where I say Trump is inflationary, but Trump is bad for real estate. That doesn't make sense in economic principles.
Yeah, this has come up. We talked about this in March.
Yeah, and that's because of leverage.
Yeah, because
and the leverage that created the values
right
to the
now
max
was too good, and so that means that if you're getting into, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if you get into, I don't know. I still think it's kind of a tough.
But there's no way to say real estate has not gone down.
No, that's not what I said at the start, that it's gone down 20%. But I don't think it's gone down by any more.
Okay, so what can we expect? Here's the thing: is the best part is Trump does have a lot of really good businessmen behind him. And I do think that they understand how tariffs work, right? And again, so you go back to the fear episode. Sure, his tariffs are inflationary. Sure, we need to be cognizant of that, but it's not like I need to be afraid of it. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So kind of in the election standpoint is, well, from an economical standpoint, that was the one threat. I'm not really that afraid of that scenario because of the team that he has around him. So how do things get implemented going forward?
So if we were to onshore those jobs, and this is a legitimate, I don't have the answer to this question. If we're to say, hey, here's the tariffs, this makes the price go up by X amount, maybe there is a realm where part of the reason that job is not here already is just because it's not the way we've done it in the past. That concept, that idea that like, hey, for the last 30 years, we've just sent everything to China. That's the way we do it now. This part of the product gets built here. This is done in China, and then we import it. And nobody's really even thought to be like, hey, let's put the investment in place to go build something in Oklahoma or Kansas,
Absolutely.
where minimum wage is $6.
Yeah,
and so
that's
you're still going to have higher. You're going to have higher labor costs, right? but you're going to have less issues on the supply chain front.
Maybe,
You're going to
yeah.
have and so it's like and I don't know that we know.
Well, and that's the thing with tariffs. So, and here's the thing. Changing supply chains takes a long time.
Totally.
And so if you need to implement, again, a scalpel, where do you implement it? How do you implement it? Do you create time for the supply? So it has to be a master plan. And that's where I look at it is you can go into this. My first initial thought was, well, we need balance. We can't have a red House Congress presidency. Well, if you actually want to get something done, you kind of need that. The thought is, well, what does he do from like an LGBTQ dad? Like, okay, well, fuck. Other rights, right? So is he really going to unwind those? And here's the thing is where I look at Trump is we know who he is. He cares about himself. Does he really care? He doesn't care about getting reelected anymore. Does he need to pander to his constituents?
I think he might go third term.
I
I think he might try.
He'll try. No,
could
that's
go
a
out-
definite.
he
He
could
will
go-
try.
he could go out with it.
There's no way his ego can just say, I'm the best. You got to
I
give me
don't
another
know.
shot. But here's the thing. I think he's probably legacy focused. If I'm him and I want to be the best president of all time, immediately I abandon my constituents and I start. And if you think about him, like one of the questions I saw him, he was asked about Florida where they're doing a 6-week abortion term. He's like, well, it needs to be longer. He didn't answer the question, but he answers things in a reasonable statement where he's not afraid to say, and I've heard him say this multiple times, well, yeah, that's too far. Yeah, we need a little bit more reasonability. So
He didn't answer the question in that scenario.
no, he answered it by saying it should be longer than 6 weeks. He didn't say what it should be,
Oh, sure.
but he hints all the time that that's not reasonable. Right. And going back to the joke, you can listen to his statements and come away with, yeah, that was a racist statement. Or you can come away with, well, that statement could be painted in a racist way.
Sure.
We don't know what Trump is because everyone projects who he is to us. We have everyone's opinion of who Trump is. We really don't know who he is because he's never been in a position where he no longer cares. He cared before. Now he doesn't care. So if he ultimately wants to be the best president of the same, maybe that means, well, maybe you need to back off from a personal body standpoint, Republicans. Let me run the country from an economic standpoint. But maybe we should let some of the other people have some say in what we do from a social standpoint. Does that make sense? Because
No, I agree with that.
yeah, because I don't think Trump's a Christian. Like he's not a Christian. He's not anti-abortion.
Well,
he's not.
He says
What he says and what he is are two different
I
things. You
totally
look at the
agree.
way the guy acts. He doesn't act like Jesus.
No, I totally agree. And nobody ever has. That's kind of the point. But
Well, there's
There-
a spectrum there, and I don't think he's that close.
there's a spectrum everywhere, and I think he's
Yes.
pretty far too.
Yeah.
But I think to the point of him being all about Trump, I think part of that is when you're all about you and you really care what other people think about you, it's what you're saying. It's that you're going to do the thing that makes, and I don't, whether or not he is genuinely a good or bad person, I don't think intent matters as much as outcome.
Absolutely.
And from his, it's like, yeah, maybe his intent is to do this thing because he wants everybody to be like, Trump is the best ever. We love Trump. It's mind blowing that we thought he was the worst. And then he did all these things for both sides that turned out great. I don't know. I don't know if he's going to do that. But I think from the perspective that he is a narcissist, I think he might, where it's like, hey, I'm actually just going to listen to all these people's social perspectives, and I'm just going to not step on a bunch of toes. There's no reason to
Right.
anymore.
Right.
I want my legacy to be the guy who missed one term, came back, did it again, and then just like blew everybody away by making, and I mean, to the point of like, if you're running a business, nobody has any idea what anybody says in the board meetings at the top of the Coors Light executive suite, the C-suite up there. But everybody knows what the outcome is from that. And they're just trying to make you think that they are a certain thing, right? They're trying to make everybody love their product because they show that they put this facade on. And I think that's how Trump runs his life. It's just, this is my face that I'm showing.
He was the influencer before influencers were influencers.
Yeah,
So-
the apprentice.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what does this do with prices, interest rates, and you think the economy crashing?
I don't think the economy crashing is correlated to Trump. by
You
any
think
means.
that's because the stock? To explain your thing that you talked about, Mike, give the high level of it that you're telling me.
I think that too many dollars have been put into the stock market in the past few years that would not have been put into the stock market if what has been happening with interest rates wasn't happening, to Mike's point.
So
And
you're
since real
explain that
estate
further.
hasn't been transacting, And so all of the excess capital has just been dumped into the stock market
because people
and
aren't buying
everybody's-
bonds and people aren't buying mortgages. You're
and
saying.
yeah, and people, yeah. So the real estate market has slowed
Because
2020
interest rates were low, so no one wanted to buy them. You're saying. So people are putting money in
nothing
the
was
stock
trading.
market.
Yeah, no, because interest rates were high.
Okay.
And so nothing was trading in real estate. So houses weren't trading. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that when you have whatever we have, 300 million Americans, even when 150 million of them want to buy a new house that's more expensive, but they can't do it, their money goes back into the stock market because it wasn't already whatever tapped for a 401k or an IRA, and so they just personally put it into Tesla or Nvidia or whatever it may be. And I think that a lot of stocks right now are overpriced relative to their PE ratios.
But you think real estate's also overpriced, or Mike does?
I think they have really high PE ratios.
Not overpriced, but not. It doesn't have a wave to push it up in the future. It doesn't have an inflationary wave pushing it up. And if we even have an inflationary wave, it won't push it up.
So what is that?
But
so
I'll
you
go
think-
back to his comment, which is it's the equity. It's the difference between a credit market and an equity market. We have, at the global level, we have all this equity, we have all this printed money. And because we don't want to be lenders, we don't want to be in the bond market, we don't want to be in the mortgage market, well, what's your other option? It's the stock market. And so to your point, when Trump took power in 2016, PE ratios were 16 or multiples were 16. Now they're 20. Right. And so the relative value of the stock market is less now, even though it's at a record, it's relatively less value than it was 8 years ago. And that's a byproduct of how much money's in the economy. And so what's moving, the Trump trade started about 30 days ago. So when we had the Fed rate cut, so yields before the cut, they got down under 4, 3.9, 3.8, 3.7, down into 3.6s. Cut was made, they came to 3.8. Then we had this period of time where the bets on the Fed kind of unwinded and we settled under 4. And then the Trump bet started being made. And then we quickly went from 4 to 4.1 to 4.2, settled out around on a 4.25. And then a week prior to the election, we jumped up to the 4.4, 4.5.
So why? Yeah, because people were thinking rates go down with Trump. Why was rates going up?
Well, it's the inflationary. Trump trade is the inflationary trade, which is, okay, so if it's going to be inflationary, money's not going to the bond market. Money needs to flow to, right? So if we're going to be inflationary, we want to be in equity. We don't want to be a lender. So we don't want to be in bonds. We don't want to be in the mortgage world. We want to be in equity. So we're going to go to the stock market. And Bitcoin also hit a record as well. What's interesting is gold isn't performing as well.
Yeah, so you're saying more people are buying equities because they see inflation is coming. They'll make more money there. So they're not buying bonds. They're not buying mortgages, meaning those rates have to go up to make it more attractive to bring these investors back in.
And it's a trade-off decision based on the money of equity in the market.
Good. That was good.
So
say it again.
He wouldn't have said that 8 months ago.
I love it.
You've taught him so much, Mike.
No. So what does that mean though? So So now interest rates will be high, so real estate will not transact, bringing prices down, or prices remain flat, or what happens with that?
Yeah, I think prices can only go down so far because think of it this way, on the residential side, they can only go down so far because there's a value component, a shelter component of value there that creates a floor of value. On the commercial world, they can only go down so far because there's an income component.
So you're talking we didn't see prices change because we're in the residential space of non-new construction. What have you seen in new construction, and why is that different than the other spaces?
Yeah, because builders are a commodity. They sell a commodity. So they'll do whatever it takes to sell that commodity because there's no shelter component.
Because they have short-term debt, you're saying?
No, because they build to sell to create profit.
Yeah, they have.
They only exist. They only own real estate to sell it. Existing homes are not like that. No one owns an existing home to sell it. They first own it to live in it. They don't own it to sell it. Mm-hmm. And so when they sell it, it's event driven, right? Mm-hmm. Builders are like, it doesn't matter what's happening, they have to sell. And so existing owners can just not sell.
So what does that mean? Like, what does that tell someone? They should be buying new construction right now because it's trading at a discount?
Potentially. In the the best part about real estate right now is because interest rates went so high, we went to local. Real estate always was local until the Great Recession, and then the cheap, easy money made everything the same. So now you're local, and there could be areas where you don't have a lot of supply and builders are not dropping their prices and pre-construction selling out, and that may make sense. You're not going to find a lot of markets like that. But the new construction market is where you want to go for values, because the new construction market is always at the top. It always moves the fastest because the sellers are commodity driven. So they're true economically driven, where the existing home market is not a free market. Those decisions are, the seller decisions are not made based on free market economics. Those decisions are made, where's my job going to be? What else can I buy? What are rents? It's significantly different.
So how does this affect what people should do? Because you're still buying deals right now, but what you're telling me makes it sound like, okay, home prices are not going to go up. You're getting in at an all-time high. Interest rates are going to get worse. Home values are going to go down more. It sounds like you're saying now is a bad time to buy, but your decision-making is completely opposite. You're buying more deals than you've ever bought right now, right?
Yeah, because if people are not transacting, what does that mean? It means there's opportunities for the people that do need to transact. So you just want to be the buyer for the people that need to transact in a market they really don't want to transact in. Because if they're transacting in a market they don't want to transact in, they're doing it for a purpose. And they're accepting the reality of, this time sucks, but I have to do it. So I'm just going to do what needs to be done. And then as a buyer, like, yeah, I mean, it kind of sucks, but I don't want to offer you $1 million. I'd like to offer you 1.2, but I can go buy that for 9. And so the only way I'm buying this is if you give it to me for $1 million.
Yeah, but you're saying you're not going to see inflation and home prices and values go up in real estate for an extended period, right? Is what
to the retail market, because they aren't opportunistic.
Okay, sure. But in general as a whole in real estate, commercial and residential, you're saying you're not expecting to see prices increase.
I would not.
So why are you buying right now?
Because I because I create value, because I force appreciate.
So you're just buying at a discount compared to today's rate still, and then you're not planning on.
I buy with a plan.
Yeah.
I don't buy to park and wait. And that's where
Mike isn't buying new construction apartments at the peak of the market. I know you know that. I'm saying that for the people listening.
And the only reason I'm talking about new construction is because that's the purest market. That's where you can see what's actually happening in the marketplace.
Yeah, totally.
So let's go back to the trend. So what to expect? So the trend has been really clear the past 5 to 6 months. Rates have been going down. Inflation's been going down up until the last job report, which we have not yet seen a revision on. And so really it's the revision. Nothing's going to happen on the Trump trade. It will not get unwound until we see a revision to the really strong job reports that we just had. Mm-hmm. And based on all the trends, where would you, if you had a gun to your head, what would you bet? That the revision is going to be up, that there were more jobs, or that the revision is going to be down? We're going to have a softer report or a stronger report? My money would be that the revisions are going to show a softer job market than we really have. Mm-hmm. And that's when that trade will start getting unwound, which means, we don't want to be in the stock market. Now let's move our money back into the bond market. And so until that event happens, we're not going to see money to go back into the bond market. Until that happens, our mortgage rates are going to be elevated. Until that happens, transaction volume will be low.
Do you think prices go down or remain flat?
Yeah, I don't see prices going down much. They will in the cyclical scenario, right? Just in the normal.
So you think like how many years later until you start seeing inflation again? Rates have to go back down to what percent, and then you start seeing prices increase?
Yeah, and this is where you want to look at longer time frames. I think if you want to look for a silver lining in this, rate higher for longer means lower for longer on the flip end side of that. But we don't know what higher for longer is.
Wouldn't now be a good time to buy then if you're saying prices are flat and you're going to have an inflationary period?
Yeah, it's just another window. We're just in another window that lines up with rates and cycle, right? So we had these little windows the past few falls, and those windows closed mid-December to mid-January. Those windows closed. We're just in another window.
Do you think so I think it doesn't matter what the market's doing, and you can find a deal at any time point.
Absolutely.
So I think you overthink it. Like if you're going to buy one deal ever for your whole life, like maybe put some. Yeah, and you can try to time it, but most of the time, it's your skill set in buying a deal is better than what the market is doing.
It's context around the word deal that it makes me sick. That's what I'll say.
But we got that on our name, Deal Junkies.
No, I know, because we actually do deals. But the word deal is the word that you use for every piece of real estate that has ever been for sale.
Any shitty listing.
That's not what the word deal means. We do good
What's
deals.
The word deal mean?
A deal is...
A deal is you're happy to buy it.
Dane, what does the word deal mean?
Well, deal for me means that we are getting something that will allow us to create value outsized of the normal amount that you could create in a property. And so we can go in and we can create value that we normally could not with just any regular property on the market.
I like Mike's definition better. It makes me happy to buy it. Everything is every house is a deal.
And it's it's important to understand the time frames we're talking. My thing is saying real estate won't be a hedge against deflation. That's a smaller time window, right? If you're buying on a 30-year time window, of course it's going to be a hedge against real estate. But what's different about real estate right now is our debt doesn't have value. The debt you're borrowing at right now doesn't have value.
Doesn't have positive value.
It doesn't have positive value like it did in 2020. So, okay, you want to go get debt, but really long-term debt doesn't really matter. Other than the sake of safety of the sustainability of the deal, you're not getting debt for an asset. Like, here's a really good example of my care facility. When I was talking to the investor, I was talking about the seller note, and he's like, oh, boy, that debt really is an asset. Yeah, because debt should be an asset, which we can do in our creative structure world. We can turn debt into an asset. The past, up until 2016 to 2022, you could turn, at the retail market, you could turn debt into the asset simply by borrowing retail debt.
Do you think
that option is gone?
Do you think for debt to be an asset, you have to be able to trade it to someone else, or not necessarily?
No. It's an asset to you holding it. It's an asset to whoever holds it. So it can have more value if you can push that debt onto someone else, if you can transfer.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like that debt that you're taking on there, someone else would also take that debt, versus if you took on a bank loan at 7.5%, someone else may not take that debt. So now you're kind of stuck where you're at.
Well, here's
the business model.
Debt's a liability. Good debt is good.
But you mean on a balance sheet?
On a balance
Yeah,
sheet.
that's
It's always a liability.
I
Sure.
just don't want there to be
No, it is an asset on the banks.
debt.
Hey,
It's
we
an
don't
asset on
do
the
don't do Econ 101 here.
That's-
We do a Econ 801 here. Debt is an asset. It should show up as a fucking asset on your balance sheet.
Okay, going back to
The balance sheet in your brain, not the balance sheet of life. The balance
well,
sheet
on the
in your
bank's
brain
balance sheet,
Good.
the debt is an asset.
is an asset.
Well, it's not their debt though. It's a note in favor of them.
Yeah.
That's
It's not dead. It's a note.
That's-
It's the opposite
Okay.
side of it.
It's literally the opposite.
All right. Fair
What
enough.
do you mean? That's because it's
You can
not
go
the
back
thing.
to traveling.
But but debt provides value in a lot of different ways. So we bought a seller finance deal. It was a pretty decent big down payment, and it was 5% interest only payment. So the value of that wasn't the 5%, because at the time interest was 6%. The value was interest only and not having to
Interest only and 5%.
Right. So that value was a period of time. Now that we have the asset repositioned and now we're going to rent it to a daycare, I may as well just refinance that out, because we have $400,000 of equity. So the value of that debt isn't worth the value of that equity.
Yeah, I follow you.
$400,000 of like excess equity. you mean?
Excess equity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that you can pull out.
We can probably 200 of it out, right? So we can pay higher cost to our debt, but we can get equity to put to work.
So you were talking about trends and how prices changing over time and what percentage they've increased by. I actually did this thing where I took the data and put an Excel sheet for the last 62 years from the Fed, and I took the average sales price, or the median sales price, I believe it was, in the U.S. across.
Where did we get you from?
It's funny he
And
did
I
that.
actually just did this thing.
You can actually
No,
do
I-
a Google
I-
search. and
Saturday
find it.
afternoon.
No, I have it on a
Super Bowl.
spreadsheet here.
Go to the Fred.
Yeah, so I pulled all the Fred data and put it in Excel.
Yeah.
And then what I did was I ran it forward and backwards so you could see the change over time, starting at the first year they started tracking data from until you got to whatever year you wanted to look at. And then I ran it backwards so you could run it from 2024 looking to whatever, 2000, and see the average year over year change, plus the change every single year in itself. Mike's falling asleep.
No, I just
But-
know the result.
Okay, well, tell me what's the result.
Homes have appreciated faster than inflation's gone up.
What has been the average rate of inflation?
I don't know, dude.
Average
Well, then
rate
how
of
do we-
inflation has been 2.8%.
Okay, so hey, this is going to be really hard to talk about. Never mind. Sorry,
Wait,
guys.
what
Yeah.
has it been?
Well, it depends on which time frame you're looking over. So tell me a year.
Oh, I was
Of-
saying over 60, the whole.
Oh, over the whole 60.
See, that's the problem is you need a graph. There is a graph. You can find it. It's from the Fred. It shows it all. So
The
I
home
haven't.
price?
You see the lines. You see the lines
Yeah,
going.
that's what I
Those
did. But I
lines-
put it in, and then
That's the wrong format.
No. This is a way better format. Show me the
table.
percentage change.
No, because you can't see it. I can see the graph in my brain. I
Yes,
can't
this
tell you-
graph right here.
Yes, the two lines going together.
How much percent change per year?
But you only
Yeah,
have one
exactly.
line. You
Thank
don't.
you, Dane.
You only have one line. You need the inflation line.
Sorry, this is gonna be really hard
well.
for people to listen to.
No,
Sorry, guys.
Can you tell me?
No, this
hanging.
is important for people to understand. That's a graph with one fucking line. You need to have the two lines.
It's a line, not an effing line. But
so you can see both lines, so you can compare the two.
What lines do you want to see?
The percentage of change doesn't matter. You need to see the two lines.
What two lines would you like to see?
One is inflation. One is home values.
Okay.
What you just said,
God,
you were
dude.
us.
This is okay. We have a really smart guy who's like a computer, can't figure out the most basic.
I just don't. You're not being clear on which lines you want to see.
He was trying to upload.
We're talking about two things. Inflation is one line. House values are the other line.
Anyway,
and you want to see them go in a turn on a
so I'll just tell you
time
this
frame.
Way. Yes, that's what I did. But
no, you didn't.
No, screw you.
The smartest idiot I know.
Okay,
So-
Avery, if you cut this up to make him look smart and leave the part out where Dane says you're an idiot to make me look smart, it is not cool.
Anyway, the most shocking thing on this is just how volatile it is year over year, because you'll have swings of like 12%, and then you'll be at 2%, and then -6%, and then like, you know,
What is
and then
average inflation over the whole period?
from
Well, and then here's the other component of it. And here's, but how many times have they changed the bucket of goods inside of inflation? How do they value the median home price? Is it new homes? Is it existing homes? Is it a value of the entire bucket? There's so many equations in that don't even come into play.
I just want the answer to be 2.8 because I said that like 5 minutes ago. And it would make me really happy if that arbitrary.
Here's the reality: is interest rates are too high. You don't get value from that debt. Inflation does not help you with the cost of your debt right now. So debt is not an asset.
That's never.
So even though in 2020 you could buy a property, the property didn't matter because the debt was such an asset. Right now, the debt is not an asset, so you have to buy the right properties, and that's why the transactions are not happening.
I disagree with Mike.
You think the debt has the value?
Never an asset. Debt always has
No,
value.
debt's
you just have to get a better deal.
Yes, you have to get the asset matters more now
Yeah.
than it did then.
Yeah, but the assets are always the thing that matters, and I think that.
No, it's not.
Yeah, that was the problem in 2020.
No, because I can sell an asset and keep the debt.
you could also sell your debt and keep the asset.
What are you talking about?
What do you mean? What are you talking about? Yeah.
Sell the asset and keep the debt from a seller carry?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was talking about bank debt, which is what caused the inflation from 2020 to 2022. That's what I...
All right, you guys are getting off track. How...
But still, the asset isn't the value in that scenario. You can buy a shitty asset with great 10-year debt and be fine. You can buy a great asset with shitty 10-year debt and not be okay.
That's true.
Let's go on.
You could also buy...
Let's just stop.
All right.
I love you, Dave.
I just don't think that's correct.
How... So, Mike, give me a summary.
Yeah,
actually, Dave.
that's the way I think is opposite.
Well, but it's not correct.
But it is correct.
We bought a really bad asset with really bad debt, and we're making it nice now. And it's going to make us a lot of money because the debt doesn't matter. It was a good deal.
Right.
Okay.
So the deal matters. The asset matters. The deal you structured around that matters. The deal is the wrapping around the asset and the financing. It's just nuance, dude. We always fight over nuance.
Dane.
This guy.
I'm going to have you recap this so Mike doesn't go on for another hour.
That's why I don't like Dane. He does what I do to other people.
Yeah.
He does to me what I do to other people.
So what did
I do it to you, too. You just
That's what I'm saying.
yell
You do it to me.
Hey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did Mike just tell us about? Give us the full summary of the presidential recap and how it affects real estate based on what Mike just told us.
I don't think that the president affects real estate. I do think tariffs will have an effect on it, but I don't think we have any idea what the effect will be because I don't think onshoring is necessarily a bad thing.
I wasn't asking for your
for
opinion.
inflation.
What did Mike just tell us? Is that what Mike just told us?
Mike and I just talked about. We just said that we don't know what the outcome will be. We know what the outcome could be, and based on current circumstance, will probably be inflationary to put tariffs in.
So you're just telling me you guys just talked for an hour about something that I didn't need to hear about because it doesn't affect my decision making at all?
I think the easiest thing to say is with Trump being elected, higher for longer will be longer.
That's a good thing.
In context, if Kamala would have won, the higher for longer would have not been as long.
So if you're someone listening to this, what do you take based on what you just said into their decision-making process when looking at buying real estate?
Nothing changes. That's the whole thing of what I was trying to say about the fucking shooting story. Nothing changes. It's the president.
Yeah,
they don't really matter
No,
in
it
our
doesn't
individual lives.
You still got to buy a good deal if it's an existing asset. I wouldn't buy a ton of new construction. I probably wouldn't be.
Well, it sounds like you should buy a ton of new construction right now.
No, it depends what and where and how, right?
Yeah.
So for example, what I would not do is go buy a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath condo in North Portland, because it's going to take 3 years for all that inventory to sell out.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons why I wouldn't do that other than that too, but
yeah.
No, I mean, the idea is that right now, the people who are going to make money in real estate are the people who really, really know what they're doing in a specific asset class, which is why when you say, what should you do in residential real estate, Mike gives you a very erudite answer because it's super specific, because Mike knows how to make money in residential real estate in Portland right now. And no, like other people might know that too.
So what if you're buying your first deal right now and you're listening to this?
Then talk to Mike or talk to Trevor.
What do you think their decision factor? Like, they should still buy a deal and be looking at deals and getting.
I'd say this: if you can get a nominal deal now, it'll be a good deal in 10 years.
That's what I was thinking. So my thought process is, if you can buy a deal on 95% leverage right now, maybe it's a fourplex,
absolutely,
and you can have a path to it paying for itself within 3 years.
Totally.
That seems like a killer deal on 95% leverage, because you're going to be minimal money in on today's highest rates.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, it's fixed, so you'll eventually be fine. But if you can plan that out 3 years on today's market rate, like I would do that 100% of the time.
It's just another window that, like, our best buys were September to December of 22, September to December of 23, and it'll probably be again September to December of 24. Just little cycles.
For residential.
Anything. Our commercial buys are going to be our best buys.
Wow. When are our best commercials?
Although I just realized I paid a 4.64 cap on that Moreland property in Vancouver. That seems awfully expensive.
Yeah, especially for the interest rate you paid on it.
Rich.
Almost would have paid a lower interest rate.
I know.
Same price was
I
fine.
know.
That's why maybe we offered the same price. But
I try to get my
Same
interest
cap.
in.
I don't know why you would go bid against us when we could have partnered and we all could have won, Mike. Thought we
Yeah.
were a team here.
we could
Because
have
I
created
was in the
a
finite.
monopoly.
And I wanted to be like Trump. I needed to win. I needed to win.
Yeah.
I needed to crush my competition.
And you know what? Sometimes in a vacuum, you lose because of that.
You remember when you guys wanted to take me out and you're like, hey, we need to, what? You said you're a little on edge. You remember you took me out for dinner? You said you're a little too emotional. And you said,
I said you were too emotional.
what was the word you used?
Aggressive.
Aggressive. There's a little bit more aggressive nature in your emotions that day.
I didn't say that.
I did.
Trevor did.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
Pin that on me.
so this was the second night out in like 2 or 3 nights, because the first night you didn't get to have the sit down. An intervention.
Oh, yeah, we just hung out and had
and you didn't have the intervention, and so you made me come back out another night so you could have the intervention of I was a little too aggressive in my emotions. That same day, I was going to send you guys a video. I made a video on what I was going to name the LLC that I was going to buy. It was like
Very aggressive.
very aggressive. It's very.
This is because we care. This is because we care.
About how much I won, and then I was like, I'm glad I didn't send that video. 'Cause that would have made the intervention even more necessary.
That's good. That's good.
This might have been the worst episode ever. Sorry.
Some people like it. Some people hate it. I'm not a fan of this one. I want to talk about deals.
Trevor was bored.
But
That's the nature of life.
You want to talk about a deal in the next episode?
We'll talk about.
Let's move on.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Now that Dane's back, we're looking for a new co-host to replace Gabe. Gabe has been kicked off the podcast for missing one episode.
Gabe is in Maui. Everybody will be gone next week. Trevor will be alone.
Solo podcast.
Just monologuing next week. Tune in.
All right. If you like the podcast, share it with a friend. It's a huge help to us. Have a good one.